What is good, hunters? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about need zones, and I think we need to keep revisiting this topic because a lot of new players are new to the game, and a lot of them don't really understand how need zone work. They can't find animals, and it's frustrating them. And I think this is just a matter of a lack of knowledge. Of course, we don't really know entirely how this works 100%, but I mean, a lot of the veterans here who have been playing the game from day one, based on player input, and my own experience, I believe we can shed some light so people understand how these zones work, so they don't get frustrated. They kind of know what they're getting into, because this game takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of time to get results. And I know a lot of players don't really like that. They want a little bit of quick results, a little bit of, quick gratification. But trust me, if you really understand how these things work, and you take your time and you put some time into the system, I think you would be rewarded very well. So what are need zones? We need to take a look and see what this actually means. And a need zone, for people who don't really hunt, are zones where animals go and do animal things. They sleep, they eat, and they drink. And these things happen different times of the day. An animal has a life cycle that takes them through their day, and they do this routine every day, all day. If we look at the encyclopedia in Way of the Hunter, we see here on the life cycle that for big game, it says your big game travels between eating zones, drinking zones, and resting zones. They never, and pay attention to that, they never travel between two zones of the same type. So they won't travel from drinking to drinking. All parts between the zones are visible, and you should be able to track them. And this is key, because again, for a lot of players, I don't think they pay attention to the clues that the game gives them. I don't think they're probably aware of what these clues are. And these clues are footprints, and these footprints are usually highlighted. They blink. If you're using Hunter Sense, if you're on Ranger, then you won't get that. But if you're using Hunter Sense, and you're on the lower difficulties, these tracks will light up and they would blink. I'm of the opinion that when these tracks are highlighted, these are semi or fairly fresh tracks. You follow them, you pay attention to them, and they will lead you to animals or a need zone. So when we look at red deer, we look at their life cycle, and we're reading from left to right, and I believe that's the order that it happens every day. So from 12 AM, they sleep, they eat, they drink, and this is repeated throughout the day. Now, I think what's really causing a lot of confusion here is that what are these animals doing in between those times? What are they doing? Can we find them? And that is the question. What are these animals doing between that time frame? And I'm of the theory that either they despawn, or they move around eating and drinking within a certain zone within the zone. And what I mean by that is, I'm going to show you an example on the map here. When I click on a red deer, what I have here is basically the red arrow is showing you two need zones that are pretty much the same. So when you load into the game, these animals will be at either zone. I have the green, which is a main zone, which is basically eating to drinking. And I have the pink arrows, which shows basically alternate zones, just like the eating zone, the red arrow. These are alternate. These animals can be there at either one at any time, or whatever time is stated in the encyclopedia. So what I have here is that these blue circles, this is what I'm talking about, a zone within a zone. Now, within those need zones, there's an area of effect where these animals will walk around and they will eat, or they'll walk around, and they'll drink, and they keep doing that in motion, and they keep moving around. So they're not sitting there waiting for you to find them. And I think other games have had situations where these animals are just sitting around, eating, doing whatever they're doing, and people are just, hunters are just kind of approaching and finding them. In Way of the Hunter, that is not the case all the time. That may happen sometime, but not all the time. So what we have here is that as you move, animals move. And it creates this dance, this rhythm where there's a high chance an animal is literally within its zone range and you cannot find it because of the way they move around. They're constantly in motion. If you sit and you pay attention to these animals, they're not just sitting around waiting for nobody. They're going about their business. And it's up to you to understand how these animals operate. Sit, watch them, observe them, and do your own studying, because it's the only way you will really get a feel of how animals operate, zone to zone, between their zones. This is very important if you want to find animals. You gotta pay attention to the clues, like poop on the ground, is it fresh? Any kind of urine, is it fresh? So again, these are the things you need to pay attention to. This is not a game where you can willy-nilly run around and shoot animals. You gotta pay attention to what these animals are doing. If not, you ain't gonna find them. So the biggest circle I have here is basically the spook range, what I consider the spook range. So when you spook an animal around or within these zones, that is the radius they're gonna run. That's probably the farthest radius they're gonna run, right? They're not going to go out of that zone. They're not going to overlap into another zone. They're going to run within that circle. And it can be very disorienting because you don't know where or what direction they run in. So it feels as if they're running for meters and meters away, miles away, when really they're not. Because if you pay attention of when you spook animals, they would sort of divide. Some will go left, some will go right. And if you look at them closely, the animals that are on the left or the right, at some point, they will stop and they will redirect and run and join the other group members. So it gives the impression that, hey, maybe they're running left when really they're running right. And if you don't really pay attention to that, you really don't know where these animals run to. And it's confusing. And this stuff only comes by studying and seeing the game over and over, which I think a lot of players don't do. They jump in for a couple hours, they leave. No one is really studying the game, and you have to study it. You have to really take the time to understand. So when these animals spook, they stay within that zone. Sometimes they run from zone to zone. If you spook an animal or herd, they'll run to another zone. So you can get lucky with that. And again, if you know where these zones are, you can find these animals. But you gotta understand how the zone works. And that's basically it. This is what I follow, and I have full success with the game. Never boring, I can find animals because I pay attention to these clues that the game give you. They're sound clues, because they're not all the time the animals are vocal. So you have to pay attention to this cracking sounds, and I'm not cracking sounds from the trees. There's distinct cracking sounds that as you move, you'll hear every so often. And these are actual animals that are in the vicinity, and the game is sort of telling you, giving you a clue. But if you don't really listen and you don't really pay attention to that, you're gonna spook them. Which I've done many times. I'm walking around, I hear the clue. I don't really clue into it. I think it's a tree or twigs or whatever, and before you know it, animals are spooked. So this will alleviate a lot of frustration the more you understand the mechanics of the game. Again, this is not a game you just jump into and you just run around and you pick up. You gotta invest time, and if you don't have time, then maybe it's not for you. But if you do have the time, invest the time, understand the games, the different species, how they operate. You're gonna have to do a lot of homework. If you need a handbook to sit down and kind of map things out, do that. And trust me, it will come second nature, and you'll understand. You'll be able to plan your hunts better. You'll understand how the zone works, and you will have success. And the game becomes fun. It's a lot of fun to hunt this way, because we've never had a game that makes us think along these lines. Give us something to think about. We just kind of mindlessly run around and we shoot, and which is fine. Sometimes we need that. But this is a game that you gotta invest the time. So I hope this has helped, especially new players, or players who don't really understand how things work. Hope your hunts are more successful. Hope you find joy in planning your hunts. Let me know what you think. Leave me a comment, give me some feedback. And thank you for watching, and thank you for listening.